Dead bodies. Dead bodies everywhere.
Except on the tabletop, it seems. I've never seen anybody make dead bodies like these before. They make great objective markers, good for telling a story, bits of terrain as well, and they're easy to make. So follow on to see how I do it. Now, hobby friends, if you haven't heard of the North Star figures for Stargrave and you're into sci-fi, you need to get yourself some. They're cheap, great kits that are high quality with some fantastic options. As you can see here, I've got the crews, scavengers, mercenaries and troopers and automatons I used, I think, total for these bodies. They've got a great selection of things that could be robotic / servitors through to mercenary trooper style things, near future to sci-fi weapons. It's honestly, they're fantastic. And for the price, you get so many bodies. I use these in all of my projects. Now, when you're putting together some dead bodies for yourself, you need to be thinking about how would they be lying. Cut the joints, cut the ankles, the knees, the arms, what have you, and reposition them to make them sprawled out or lying down, collapsed as it were, because you can't readily buy kits like that. And all I'm really doing is just using snips, a razor saw, and some sprue goo to reposition the limbs into the correct kind of orientation. Now, hobby friends, as I always say to you, don't overthink it. Just let it flow through you, position a few of the bodies. After all, it's not for Golden Demon. All you're doing is you're adding an immense extra level of storytelling and depth to your games. Your friends will appreciate it, and I'm telling you now, they're not going to nitpick it. Now, one of the key factors I find in making a convincing body for the tabletop is it needs to lie flat. Flatter than you're ever gonna get it using your traditional just like posing of arms and legs down. So here's how I get them to lie dead flat. I use a series of these sanding boards that I've made using wet dry sanding paper. I start at 50 grit and I've gone all the way up to 2000 grit. These things are really easy to make and I've made a video on how I make them. Seriously though, don't stress too much. Just grab the figure, a few swirls on the 50 grit, and then a couple of swirls working your way up the board. And by the end of it, the back of these figures is basically smooth like it was a virgin plastic. It's really unbelievable how effective these big sanding boards are. Just remember, a nice continuous motion. Now that I have the orientation of the bodies in the right spot, it's time for some damage. A few drilled bullet holes here and there. Got my hobby knife out there and macerated a large hole for like a bolt around or something, etc. Some gashes. Let your brain run wild with all the sort of horrible effects that could happen on the modern battlefield. And then to paint them, it was just simply some Mechanica standard grey and some white, and then some contrast paint. Remember, these aren't your display models. They are literally just corpses on the battlefield. Once that was done, I found the contrast was a bit too bright, so I gave them a quick knockback with some bone white or a skeleton white, as it were, whatever. You've got ivory lying around, just to dull them down a bit. By the way, a particular shout out goes out to Citadel Paint and their fantastic paint lids. Oh my goodness, Games Workshop, come on, get better. Let me know, hobby friends, down below if you've had a similar incident. Once I'd dealt with that mess, it was time for a bath in Necroscunge. A little acrylic wash that I make myself, just using green, brown, and black. Got a great video on it, you can see how I make it. I then let these models obviously dry out. By the way, using baking paper when you do things like this is a great way to stop all the wash sticking to your table, even though it's already a mess as it is. For the final touches, I used some Citadel Tesseract Glow and Blood for the Blood God technical paints. Tesseract Glow as like the whooping swords on my dead servitor there. And then Blood for the Blood God, obviously, for blood. And gore effects were used using gore from Dirty Down. All three of these paints are awesome products, and I highly recommend you get familiar with them. If you ever are going to use the gore for the gore from Dirty Down, however, make sure you use some toothpicks. Do not stick your paintbrush in there, because if you do, it is the last thing you will ever be doing with that paintbrush. So here we are, hobby friends. I think they're pretty neat. Let me know down below what you think of them and how you would have done it differently.